We have some breaking news from the NHL. The deadline has just passed for players to file for salary arbitrations for the 2025 restricted free agents. We now know that 11 players have elected to do so, but there's still some interesting names that chose not to. We'll discuss the implications of doing both things coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some pretty important news to discuss here when it comes to the restricted free agent class of 2025 and those that have filed for salary arbitration. Now, of course, when you first come onto your rookie contract, you don't have arbitration rights. You need a little bit more experience. So typically, the players going for arbitration are usually anywhere from around age 24, 25, 26, usually within a couple of years of being unrestricted free agents. Now, the deadline to file for salary arbitration just passed here at 5 o'clock Eastern time here today. On Saturday, and 11 players have chosen to file for arbitration. Now, teams can also choose to file for arbitration on that negotiation with players, and they can be the ones to initiate that process. The deadlines for teams to do so is Sunday, so we have basically another day. So these 11 players are some pretty prominent names here, including 3 with the Winnipeg Jets. What this means is these players are no longer offer sheet eligible, and that's a pretty important thing. We've seen the offer sheet be used more here in recent years, especially last year. We saw 2 successful attempts here with the St. Louis Blues, kind of preying, if you will, on the Edmonton Oilers in landing themselves Phil Broberg and Dylan Holloway, who both had breakout seasons in St. Louis as well. So these players cannot go through that process. They will not be eligible to get an offer sheet, but there's still some interesting RFA names out there that have not filed for this process, could still be doing so. So let's go through this list. There's including 3 with the Winnipeg Jets, which is the team with the most here. The Jets have just shy of $20 million in cap space. They have $19.9 million, and this list includes Morgan Barron, Dylan Samberg, and top-line player Gabe Vilardi. Now, looking at each of their cases here, Morgan Barron's 26 years of age, put up 15 points in 74 games this year. He's basically completed the equivalent of about 3 full years with the Jets after being acquired from the Rangers. His qualifying offer was due around $1.4 million, so obviously he's looking for an increase on that. Barron's been a pretty useful bottom 6 forward for Winnipeg, and we'll see where things go. But obviously, that's where things stand with him. Gabe Vilardi, like I said, has been a top-line player for Winnipeg, 25 years old now, had 61 points in 71 games played last year. His qualifying offer based on his lost contract is only $3.6 million, and it's probably fair to say that Vilardi's looking for a pretty healthy increase on that. Of course, at this point, we don't know exactly where the negotiations stand. Obviously, there's a gap, and the $3.6 million qualifying offer, which the Jets would have known, isn't going to cut it here. Another one is Dylan Samberg, who's 26 now, put up 20 points in 60 games last year. His qualifying offer was only $1.5 million, but he's really, I think, really grown here, and I think he's got a lot of potential. I'm not sure what the solution is here, because obviously if you go really short term, sometimes you see players walked directly to unrestricted free agency. If they cannot come to an agreement and go through this full process, sometimes generally you get a 1-year deal. And now if the player only has 1 year left before being an unrestricted free agent, that's all you can do anyway. If they're further out than that, it can be a 1 or a 2 year deal. Now in the case of Vilardi and Samberg, like I said, I'm pretty sure that they're both looking for significant increases. Barron, I'm sure, obviously is looking for an increase too, but I don't think it'd be quite as large. So we'll see. I mean, the Jets have the space to fit all of them in, but it really will be interesting to see how all these contracts work out. We've also got the Anaheim Ducks with 2 players. They've got almost $29 million in cap space, so lots of room. Defenseman Drew Hellison, 24-year-old right shot defenseman. His qualifying offer was only $874K, put up 13 points in 56 games last year. Obviously looking for more money, and we'll see where that goes. Lucas Dostal will be an interesting case. The Ducks goaltender, who's 25, set to have full reign here as a starter, basically did last year due to Gibson being out injured again for periods of time. Ended up playing 54 games. He had a .903 save percentage and a 3.1 goals against on a underperforming, Ducks team that didn't have a great year, but we know that the Ducks are looking to take a big jump this year. I mean, and they're really, to be honest, their year last year, it wasn't horrible. They had a nice increase in performance from the year before, but they've got a ways to go to be a playoff team. Considering how far out of the playoffs they were, it's just not shocking that Dostal's numbers are what they are. I don't know that's a true indication, though, of really what he can do. There's a lot of games that they wouldn't have stood a chance to win if it wasn't for him. His qualifying offer, only $892,000. I'm sure he's looking for something at least mid-range. I'm guessing at least a 4 to 5 year term. Probably $5 to $6 million, and maybe, I'm not sure what he's looking for exactly, but he's going to be looking for a hefty raise, no doubt. Another name to watch is Seattle Kraken forward Kaapo Kakko, of course, came over from the New York Rangers last season. The Kraken still have $11.5 million in space. The 24-year-old Kakko had a nice resurgence and found his game a lot more after coming over in that trade. With the Rangers last year, he was putting up less than a half point per game, 14 points in 30 games. But during his time with the Kraken, he put up 30 points in 49 games. So, that's pretty substantial. That is, a much higher clip. His qualifying offer is $2.4 million. Obviously looking for a good raise here. So we'll see where things go with Kakko. The Maple Leafs, who have just a little bit under $5 million in space, do have RFA forward Nick Robertson filing for arbitration here. He's 23 years old, put up 22 points in 69 games. His qualifying offer is $913K. Not really sure what he's looking for. I don't see him getting much above that. So see where that goes. The Montreal Canadiens have a young defenseman, Jaden Struble, 23 years old as well. 13 points in 56 games last year, filed for arbitration. Now, theoretically, the Habs are over the cap, so I'm not sure how they're going to handle this, but they do have the Carey Price contract, which can solve their problems through long-term injury reserve. The other option here is they could trade the Carey Price contract and get under the cap that way. Either way, they can do something with that contract to go above or under. At this point, Struble's QO for next year qualifying offer is $813. So clearly he's looking for more money. But again, somebody like Robertson, I don't think has a huge case. So we'll see. We have the Chicago Blackhawks. Goaltender Arvid Soderblom has filed for arbitration. They got over $22 million in cap space. 24-year-old goaltender had a qualifying offer due for $1 million. So obviously we know he's looking for more than that. Played 36 games last year, had an .898 save percentage and a 3.18. I don't think he's got a huge case here to get much of a raise, but we'll see where that goes. And then the New York Islanders have 26-year-old Max Siplikov, who of course came over last year as a free agent. They've got $3.9 million in space. He had a pretty solid year, I thought, for the Islanders. The 26-year-old put up 35 points in 75 games. Qualifying offer due was about $897. So, to get him for 35 points, to get him at least a few $1 million shouldn't be a big deal. Obviously, they got to stay within their cap situation, and maybe we'll see a subsequent move ahead of time here. But that's where things stand there. Now, keep in mind, these 11 players are not guaranteed to go through the arbitration process. This just basically means they've filed for it, and typically you'll see dates come out with a scheduled arbitration hearing probably next week sometime, and we'll get a schedule, and they're going to be scheduled gradually throughout July and into August. Now, basically, these teams are going to have up until their scheduled arbitration hearing to come to an agreement on their own. So it doesn't mean that the team and the player can't continue to talk. A high percentage of cases end up being resolved on their own and the arbitration hearing end up being canceled. Generally, every year you get maybe a couple, probably I'd say around 80-85% of cases, it could even be a little more, end up being resolved without the process. I think if you're the team, because now keep in mind, like I said, there is also team-elected arbitration. We could see more players end up with an arbitration case after the next deadline passes for team-elected arb, because they could do that as well. So there could be a few more players added to this list, but if that's the case, then the list grows. It's pretty much the same process. Ultimately, the player and the team still talk, and they try to avoid the arbitration hearing. Now, one thing that changed a few years ago, once the arbitration hearing starts, negotiations stop. we had a point before where until the awarded contract was announced that the team and the player could continue the talk. That did change a couple of years back, and that's no longer the case. So basically, these teams don't have to worry about offer sheets for these 11 players. They will have a date given to them. A large chunk of these will most likely be resolved on their own. Basically, if it does make it to arbitration, it's kind of like going to court, if you will. You're going to have the team arguing why they need to pay that player less money. So they're going to be calling out everything. They're going to talk about all the things they don't like about you, all the reasons why you're not a good player or not good enough or whatever the term you want to use. And then the player side, they're going to argue why they're better and why they deserve more and all that. It's a case that quite often damages relationships. I did a study a couple of years back, and I reference this a lot this time of year, every year when we get to this point, that I want to say it was about 3 or 4 years ago I did this study. And I looked back at the previous 10 years of salary arbitration cases, or maybe it was even longer than that. I think it was a 15-year study is what I looked at. And 90% of cases over that time frame, the players who went through arbitration was gone from the team within 2 years. And I have a lot of players you've heard talk about it afterwards saying it was the most stressful thing they've ever been through as a professional. Listening to the team that they play for and had grown this up to that point, a great relationship with in most cases, absolutely tear them down that way, it's hard to listen to. So you don't really want to go through this process if you can help it. And I said most cases will be resolved on their own. Now, the other thing that I said is notable here, no offer sheet. So the players who are arbitration eligible but have not filed are still eligible for offer sheets, so it could still happen. Some prominent names remain, including the top RFA we've been talking about in the rumor mill, Sabres defenseman Bo Byram. So he did not file for arbitration, so he is still eligible. Flyers defenseman Cam York is another name. I know during the Tortorella era as a coach there, that relationship was not good. There was some talk that York might be on his way out. Of course, things have changed now. They have a new coach. I'm not sure how things have changed between York and the organization or where everything stands. I just don't know that the team really viewed him as being a long-term piece there. We'll see. Jack McBain, of course, another prominent center. He's got big size, good skater, typically plays lower in the lineup. A lot of teams, I think, would like McBain. And there was some chatter about an offer sheet with him. He was one of the candidates that a lot of reporters were kind of looking at earlier into the process here before July 1 came around, and a lot of people expected that McBain in Utah likely would come to terms and we wouldn't get to this, but we are still here. This could still happen. Like I said, these 3 players I just mentioned and others that are, there's still a possibility we could hear soon that their teams are taking them to arbitration. The smart part on the behalf of those teams would be that they can avoid offer sheets being done. It still doesn't mean that the player can't sign on their own. Doesn't mean that the players, can't end up in a different situation. I don't know what's going to happen with Byram because I really believe that that's going to lead to a trade, and it's been something that's already been on their agenda here. So I don't know. Be curious to see where things go. But let me know your thoughts on these 11 players and how things go. And do you think any of these contracts are going to end up getting done ahead of time? I would bet out of the 11 players, at least 8, maybe 9 will be resolved completely on their own. But let me know what you think in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.